This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
You're running on adrenaline, which is, it's addictive. It's almost like a drug, if you can say. A good service with great customers who are just thrilled of what you've sort of done and put out, and that feels just amazing.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. With the evolution of regional dining has come a focus on capturing a true sense of place with food. Food that speaks of a region, of a place, of a period in time. In that sense, what is Tasmanian cuisine? How does the produce and climate of the Apple Isle play a role in its voice on the plate? Tim Hardy is a co-owner and executive chef of Vanbone Restaurant and Farm in Tasmania. Tim, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Anthony. How are you going?
I'm good. Tell us a little bit about the region that Vanbone is in. I know you're quite connected to the produce in the region there.
Yeah, of course. So Vanbone is, it's about 45 minutes kind of east-southeast of Hobart in a little area called Brim Creek. It's predominantly dairy country, really beautiful green rolling hills, and right on the east coast of Tasmania, looking north up towards Maria Island. It's a beautiful part of Tasmania with some really wonderful produce kind of happening from the area. There's a few little market gardens in the area. There's a couple of vineyards. We're actually next door to Brim Creek Vineyard. Fred Peacock making some lovely wines there. There's oyster farms just a couple of k's away. So, wow. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful area with some, wonderful produce. There's an amazing cheese company just up the road, Tongola Farm, making beautiful goat's cheese. So, yeah, it's a pretty awesome happening little area there.
Tell us a little bit about your small-scale philosophy that you have there for the venue.
Yeah, well, Vanbone, it's about an 18-seat restaurant. We sort of book out anywhere between 10 and 16 guests at this stage in time. We have a small little garden that we basically just use solely for the kitchen. We really haven't bought vegetables for, about the last 6 months now. So
wow.
Very much in tune with our little patch down there. Our very small team head down every morning, pick the day's produce, exactly the right portions every single day for our diners. So, we pick and it's on the plate within a couple of hours. So it's a beautiful way to cook, and having sort of cooked this way now, it's hard to think there's any other way to do it.
Tell us a little bit about the produce that you're perhaps using at the moment that sort of speaks of the voice that you're giving to that region.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's ever-changing. We're just sort of coming out of summer now, so the garden's in a bit of a transition with getting our autumn-winter crops established. So we're still pretty lucky to be able to be serving tomatoes. We've got amazing cucumbers that are still hanging in there. And then, we've got lots of sort of brassicas, cabbages, that kind of stuff happening a little slowly. As winter kicks in, that'll be the next sort of round of produce. But we've got an enormous amount of leafy greens, radishes, Hackeri turnips. Like I said, tomatoes are still hanging in there. Cucumbers are amazing. There's so much. I mean, it's hard to list everything, but like I said, it basically everything on the menu is coming from the patch, apart from proteins, etc.
Well, I want to explore in more detail what you're doing at Van Bone there, but take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family?
Well, I mean, we always ate really well. It was never, on a culinary level of, we're a chef family or anything. Mum and Dad, we grew up in a pretty small little town about 20 kilometres east of Hobart. It's called Cremorne. It's on a little sand spit. And on the inside, there's Pipe Clay Lagoon. It's full of oyster leases. So as young kids, we'd paddle our surfboards out there and pick wild oysters, which sort of, spawned from the farms. But, yeah, food was always, it was just good quality food. Mum and Dad were pretty solid cooks. Mum would do awesome spaghetti bolognese and that kind of stuff. But like I said, it was never, on a culinary level. We just ate good quality food. Mum and Dad always had a little veggie patch, and I remember picking corn as a very young kid, which was always good fun. But yeah, it was just good solid food.
What triggered an interest for you for a career as a chef?
Well, it's sort of interesting. I'd always enjoyed cooking classes at school and never really thought I was going to, be a chef or anything like that. I was a very keen surfer, so that kind of ruled my life for many, many years, and it still does in a way. So I ended up getting a job as a kitchen hand and working nights just because it was perfect for surfing. So I'd surf all day. I'd head into the kitchens, get a good feed off the chefs and wash dishes till late at night and get up and do it all again. And I was doing that for quite a few years and just sort of, really chasing waves, and that allowed me to do that. And then I got offered an apprenticeship at one of the restaurants I was working at and kind of told Mum, and she said, you have to do it. You can't sort of be a surfer your whole life. So I accepted it, and it was a massive shock, I mean, the hours and the dedication to the craft is enormous. So it was a huge shock. The first few years were just kind of grinding it out, and I'm not sure, something clicked later in my career, and it was, surfing was on the back door and cooking became number one. So that's kind of how it started in a nutshell. And, it's evolved enormously since.
What's been some of the key sort of venues and people that have influenced your direction as a chef?
Well, I mean, as I finished my apprenticeship in Tassie at a small restaurant in Hobart, and I packed my car, drove straight to Western Australia, down to the Margaret River region, knowing the surf was really good there. So I drove over there and ended up getting a job at Vas Felix Winery. Aaron Carr was the chef at the time, and he's been an enormous influential figure in my career. I haven't sort of chatted with him for a few years now, but that was an amazing time. The surf was incredible. They were doing really good food at Vas Felix, and I just clicked with Az. He's a great guy, and he just mixed fun and good cooking and a good time into the scene, and it just really resonated with me. So I ended up going back and forth from Tassie to WA many times, and that Vas Felix sort of grew from strength to strength each time, and they'd won sort of every award, and Aaron was a bit of a star in the West Oz scene over there. So, he was a big influence. Working with Luke Burgess very briefly at Garage East in Hobart. That was huge. Luke's a pretty inspired guy, and, he really inspired me to want to achieve it at a high level. So I'd sort of left there. I ended up working at Lake House in Dalesford for almost a year under Brendan Wessels. He was sous chef there. I'm not sure exactly where he is now, but he was an amazing guy, just extremely eloquent and a really solid cook who, I got along really well with, and he was a big inspiration. And then, Dan Hunter, how do you go past Dan? Working at Bray in that kitchen, probably the most inspired chef I've ever had the pleasure of working under. Just incredible, from, the food philosophy to the way he talks about food, and everything they're doing on Bray Farm there is inspired from, as soon as you get in the driveway to being in that beautiful old farmhouse. It's just incredible. So, Dan, sort of working with him, it really inspired me to kind of come home and do something on certainly not a Bray level, but something similar, farm to plate cooking in a regional area. Here we are at Van Bone Restaurant.
You worked at some pretty incredible and influential restaurants, but it's really marked by being regional restaurants. What's been your interest about, carving a career in regional restaurants, and what impact has that had on you?
Well, I think the whole regional thing, it's really beautiful to go into a region, to immerse yourself within that, and discover a food experience. It just made sense to me. I think that whole kind of being a part of the community and the region, showcasing that region, has always appealed to me. And I feel like there's always been these, incredible restaurants in sort of far off regions that are almost sort of intriguing. You have to go there because it's a discovery within itself. And then for them to be able to showcase that region in such a powerful and inspired way, it's always really resonated with me. So I suppose that's kind of it. And a lot of the time these regions have had really good surf nearby. So, that was always really good as a surfer too.
You had a small stint in Sweden as well. Can you tell us a bit about that and what impact it had on you?
Yeah, that was an amazing experience. I was sort of working at Vas Felix at the time, and the Great Escape, or Gourmet Escape, I think it is a big event down in Margaret River. I just saw this Swedish chef was a part of it. I'd never heard of Daniel Berlin or his restaurant, and I just Googled him and went, wow, that guy's sort of like one of my food heroes, Magnus Nilsson. So I just emailed the restaurant and said, can I come and stage? And I got an email back from his sous chef, and they said, when can you come? So I ended up flying over to Sweden and did a 1 month stage there. It ended up being a little bit longer because I wanted to stay, and it was just an amazing time. Daniel operated a 12-seat little farmhouse in the middle of nowhere in southern Sweden. And he was doing very sort of Nordic, seasonal, just incredible food. And I loved that style. I think the whole Noma movement and then Magnus opening Farviken in just the absolute middle of nowhere inspired me heavily. So to go work with Daniel doing something similar was just incredible. They had an amazing charcuterie program. Daniel would go hunting on days off and bring wild boar back into the restaurant, and they'd butcher it. And it was just like, wow, this is insane and just amazing. And they were cooking at such a high level. It was just really an incredible experience. I think the next year they'd cracked the top 100 in the Sam Greeno Awards. So it felt amazing to have sort of jumped on something before it really blew up like that. And to see that was really cool.
Inspired by all of this, as you mentioned, you wanted to open your own place back in Tasmania. What were the challenges and hurdles early on in trying to create sort of your vision?
Well, I mean, it's been a pretty wild ride, to be honest. To dig a hole in a empty paddock in, essentially the middle of nowhere and say we're building a restaurant is pretty wild in itself. So yeah, that happened about 5 years ago. The hole was dug. We were pretty excited. Yeah, we're building a restaurant. And I mean, anybody who's built from the ground up knows there's enormous challenges within that in itself, financially, all of that. I'd never set foot on a building site before, so ended up kind of being thrown into the deep end and helping trades along the way. Me and my business partner, who's not really in the business anymore, but we ended up doing quite a bit of labouring. We laboured for building the 4 metre high rammed earth walls that are a huge part of the restaurant. That was really cool. And yeah, very, very much a part of it. But yeah, building is challenging in itself. To say, you're going to be a restaurant without, any financial backing, that's huge. And then COVID hit. And we were like, wow, we've just thrown 4 years of enormous energy into this thing and the industry's just gone to shit. So what do we do? So we got to the point where it was like, the building's ready, let's just open and see what happens. We'd thrown everything into it at that stage. And, yeah, we opened the doors, and a year and a half later, it's kind of surreal, but it's just gone from strength to strength. And, yeah, we're thrilled.
With that timing of COVID and your vision, did it alter because of COVID, what you had intended to open?
No, not at all. I mean, we always wanted to open a really small regional destination style restaurant. We'd always wanted to do degustation menus, and we haven't changed really anything. The model of the restaurant is very COVID sort of safe, I suppose, being really small, not needing enormous amount of staffing or numbers to be successful. So without even realising it, we'd opened a pretty good COVID model, really. But no, nothing had changed. We've stayed very true to the vision, and it's been amazing, really. Just a lot of hard work, but extremely rewarding. And yeah, the restaurant's somehow kind of won some pretty cool awards, and there's a lot of talk, which is great.
Tell us a little bit about the design of the restaurant, but also of the surrounding sort of grounds and orchard and garden, because I know you've had a few people involved, and that's really important to what you do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's that call of, it takes an army to build a village, and very much the same to do something what we're doing. So my fiance, Laura Stukin, who is the restaurant manager, she designed the building. So she was a interior architect and has had a major career change. So she designed the building many years ago, and it is incredible. It's very architecturally designed, big rammed earth walls. It's sort of tucked in to a hillside, lots of wonderful angles, and it's a really just awe-inspired looking building. We have enormous windows throughout, so the dining room is very open and just incredible views from every sort of table and vista. The kitchen's basically in the middle of the restaurant, where, the diners can come up and chat or that. We're very much in the dining room as such. We cook entirely on fire. We don't have any gas in the restaurant. We do have a few electric sort of appliances, but it's about 90% cooked over coals and fire. And then, the garden was designed by a local permaculturalist, Hannah Maloney, who's pretty influential in sort of the Hobart scene with permaculture. So she designed it. and we've sort of slowly implemented it over the years. We now have a gardener, Stewie, who's a legend, and he's been really, really great in just keeping the patch really moving, and he's very good with that. It's myself and Laura in the restaurant. I'm the executive chef. She's the manager, and we have a fourth-year apprentice in the kitchen. And that's basically the team.
Wow.
Very small. We work enormous hours, but, you know, our customers get a lot out of it. We're the ones who built it and designed it. We're the ones that are running it. So everyone gets to talk to us and understand the story.
Tell us a little bit about your food, and is there a dish or two you can sort of tell us about that sort of epitomizes where you're at as a chef?
Yeah, I mean, my food, it's pretty, I mean, the whole cliche of seasonal cooking, but if you are cooking in Tasmania, there really is very set seasons. So there's no other way to cook. It's very seasonal cuisine. I think, you know, we're very sort of vegetable driven. I think we have a couple of sort of dishes on the menu. We've always finished with a duck dish, which is just amazing duck coming from a small farm in the north of the state. Matthew's the farmer there. He runs Strellyfield Farm, and they're incredible birds. We've sort of had those on from day one. Look, it's hard to sort of describe your own style. I think, you know, that's a tricky one, but we'll say it's very, very produce and produce driven and seasonal cooking. Dishes that I'm sort of excited on at the moment. I mean, it's very much autumn at the moment, and there's pine mushrooms everywhere in the forest. So I've always loved, I ate a dish in San Sebastian of just a warmed egg yolk with grilled mushrooms, and it blew my mind, the simplicity of it, the flavour, it just is so perfect. So we're kind of doing a bit of a spin on that, just a warmed egg yolk with beautiful fresh pine mushrooms that we pick the morning before we serve them. And the mushrooms are just grilled on the fire until they're sort of just cooked, sliced to order, and then a warmed egg yolk. There's a few other bits and pieces on the dish, but that's really lovely at the moment.
Do you feel a sense of obligation, given that you're a regional restaurant, to try and create a sense of place and a sort of like epitomise the food of Tasmania or the region?
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're a Tasmanian restaurant through and through. We use nothing that comes from interstate, and that is the same with our wine list. We only use Tasmanian wines and booze, and it's just 100% Tasmanian produce. Most of it comes from the south of the state. We are getting some summer truffles from up in the north, and then the ducks are kind of from Launceston area, and that's about as far as we go. So the food's all coming from about 200-300 kilometres within the restaurant. Again, we're sort of using about 80-90% from our own garden. But look, I think Tasmania is very much that. In a sense, you know, we're proud of the state, we're proud of the produce, and most of the good restaurants sort of think the same way. It's Tasmania. We're proud of it. We have, you know, we use the producers, and it's a wonderful thing, you know. Everything that we use that we're not growing, we know the farmer. We've been to the farms predominantly, and we know where it comes from. We know where it's been picked. We know their story, and we tell that to our customers. So anyone coming, they're getting this, you know, it's just a story of our time, place, the product, producers, and the moment in the season. And I think that's a very true expression of cooking, and that's what we're trying to achieve. And most people that come say we're doing that, and it feels really great.
you've worked at many venues that have already carved this path that you're on in their own region. Well, what surprised you about sort of running and building your own restaurant and expressing sort of your true self in that sense?
Well, like I said earlier, the build was a real challenge financially and time-wise. Having worked in some of those really inspired, high-end, world-class restaurants, that was always just kind of a part of the brigade. But seeing how they did it, I think, was really important, especially Brave, how they operated and utilised the garden. So bringing that into my little patch, it's always challenging sort of finding your own voice as you've been influenced so heavily from certain people. But having the garden has just been the most incredible thing, and really that dictates what we cook, how we cook. And it sounds very silly, but we go down every morning and, we're picking this, picking that for the menu, and something just catches your eye in the corner and it says, I'm ready to go, and this is kind of what you should do. So the menu's just created loosely from the garden, and it just kind of happens. I don't know. It's a weird thing that there's a really lovely connection with that. And the garden just tells us when and what to do. And I think over the last year, I've really sort of found my style with that. And look, the garden says, this is what we're doing. And it's quite amazing. And most chefs that, have very much a large kitchen garden that they work with sort of say the same thing. And I never really got it until we really worked that way ourselves in my own venue. So pretty amazing that's kind of how it works, and very connected with the land. And then, look, the challenges of running a restaurant in general are enormous. I'd never had a role as a executive chef, let alone running a business. So look, been enormous challenges the whole way. It's not an easy game to play in, that's for sure.
Well, the last couple of years have been challenging for many and impacted people in different ways. Well, what sort of effect has the pandemic had on you and your role in the industry?
Well, obviously when the pandemic hit, sort of the whole industry just closed. So I was working sort of up the East Coast and I'd lost my job. I ended up getting really sick at the time with a pretty nasty kind of autoimmune disease that I'm still dealing with now, but I'm healthy and good. So that kind of all happened at once. I got really sick, COVID hit. Almost everyone lost their jobs, within the industry. There were shutdowns, lockdowns. Tasmania closed its borders. So we really were quite COVID-free down here. And I was just dealing with my sickness and trying to get better. I'd sort of spent about 6 months being really, really sick and not really doing much. So that was kind of pretty shocking at the time, but COVID, it kind of just happened together. And then I got better and really there were no jobs in cooking, or very few. So I ended up just kind of landscaping with some friends, which was awesome to be outside and moving again from being really sick.
Wow.
But look, it didn't really affect me so much in that sense, not as much as others who were already operating within the industry. And then obviously opening, we were still open in COVID. It's still kind of killing it now, but it's we opened very much within the pandemic, and it was really hard. We didn't really have any interstate visitors coming, so we were depending entirely on really locals, and they supported us enormously. We've had great support from Tourism Tasmania, who sort of put us in a few magazines, and then the borders kind of opened, and we just started seeing some really influential players from Sydney and a few other places coming down and just saying, wow, this is awesome. And then they head off and more people come who know them. And Yeah, it's been really great. There's obviously been, challenges with, lockdowns, and on the mainland especially, we had one snap lockdown here in Tassie where we basically were told on our Monday afternoon that you're closing for the week. So as a very small business where, you're really relying on week-to-week income, that was a big one that kind of shook us a lot. And the next day we just sort of pivoted and opened as a bottle shop. We had heaps of confit duck legs that we had from our ducks. So we were serving packs of confit duck and Pinot, and wow. People came, and we made a bit of money to sort of just cover staff wages, but you run at a loss in those things. And as a small business, that's sometimes detrimental. So, look, there's been a lot of challenges, but, again, with sort of a very good model within COVID, being small and can really, just, I suppose, roll with the punches. But, it's been devastating to the industry. I feel for everyone that's been, hit hard. It's been shocking to watch, and look, I hope we're on the right path to being able to operate at full capacity.
You've rolled the dice and opened a really unique small venue that's really connected to the region. It's had a bit of a spotlight shone on it just of late. Has that had an impact on you?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it always does. You put your heart and soul into something. You work, 90-plus hours week in, week out. It's you, It's very much you on a plate. You're expressing yourself and your kind of philosophy, and then to be, put on a pedestal almost is quite surreal. I mean, I'm a pretty humble guy, and I don't really buy into any of that. Essentially, I just want to have time to go surfing. There hasn't a lot of that, to be honest. But yeah, look, I think to be in Gourmet, to be nominated as Best New Restaurant in Australia by Gourmet Traveller, that was an incredible sort of win. Even though we didn't win, we saw that as a win in itself. And then, their Top 80 Restaurant Awards came out, and it wasn't numbered or anything. It was just sort of the best 80 restaurants as such, and we were in it. So that's super surreal. We're just quietly doing our thing in a gorgeous part of Tassie, and yeah, it's amazing that, the word gets out and people are talking about it. But look, it's really great. We're thrilled that we're getting attention and some nice kind of awards and accolades. It's not everything, of course. It definitely helps with generating, I suppose, the right clientele, and generates better business, which has been amazing. But yeah, it's just kind of surreal. Like I said, we're just quietly doing our thing, and for the kind of Australia or, some parts of the world to be watching it feels amazing, and we're just stoked about that. But we never opened to be the greatest or the best or anything. We just wanted to cook really good food and be connected to that part of Tassie, and we're slowly really finding our feet within it. So it feels really great, I must admit.
In some ways, you kind of fell into the industry, and yet you've created this really incredible offering that's really quite personal. What do you love about what you do?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, you're running on adrenaline, which is it's addictive. It's almost like a drug, if you can say. A good service with great customers who are just thrilled of what you've sort of done and put out, and that feels just amazing. So I think pleasing people within that, expressing yourself is always really great to be able to do that on a platform day to day and have people really love it. That always is wonderful. I think the industry is really inspired. You're constantly meeting really interesting and inspired people. So that's probably one thing that I always get a real kick out of. And then I love eating. So to be able to cook good food, to eat it, to go to restaurants and for people to know who you are and for them to sort of cook good food for you, I think it's beautiful. So it's a wonderful industry. I definitely enjoy being a part of it and get a real kick out of pleasing people.
Well, Tim, congratulations on what you've built there and look forward to seeing what you build from now on as well. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, no worries, Huck. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and look forward to catching up. Cheers, mate.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.